guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History. We're gonna hit you up with some USA freedom. How's that for some supper? That's right, guys. The Patriot Act recently expired this June 1st of 2015, and the United States Congress acted swiftly with the USA Freedom Act. So we're gonna take a look at basically what it does, how it changes the Patriot Act, and then we'll see if you can't leave some of your thoughts down in the comments below. Here we go, guys. Why don't we go see if we can do the learning? All right, so USA Freedom, baby, and that is what's called a backronym. A backronym is like an acronym, except it's made to fit the word. So like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers it is an acronym. That's MAD, that makes sense, right? But the United and Strengthening of America by Fulfilling Rights and Ending Eavesdropping, Dragnet Collection, and Online Monitoring is a backronym. They actually mean something. And what this law does, the USA Freedom Act, is it actually extends to 2019 the USA Patriot Act. And guess what? That's a backronym again. The United and Strengthening of America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. Whew. And I think that the big idea is because a lot of like civil libertarians are kind of applauding what happened. And if you don't know what happened, the really quick story, because we really want to explain the law, is that the Patriot Act expired at the end of May 2015. So on June 1st, the federal government really can't do some of the big activities that it's been doing in terms of telling us to try to stop terrorism by collecting what's called metadata and phone records and kind of having giant computers scour through all that data looking for, pings and hits to catch the bad guys. So that expired on June 1st. So there are enough civil libertarians now, both in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, where there was a process by which everybody kind of agreed there needed to be a backing up of what happened in the Patriot Act. And remember, the Patriot Act was only passed 45 days after 9/11. And nobody really read that law, and it's just an extraordinary amount of power to the federal government that really, in most people's eyes, at least does some damage to the Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, their houses, their papers, and their effects against unreasonable search and seizure without, probable cause and a warrant and all that good stuff. So the Patriot Act really, through its phone collection, kind of bulk collection record process, and by some other things that we'll talk about in a minute, really, I think, after a while drained a lot of Americans in terms of security and privacy and all of those sorts of things. So the House Intelligence Committee, which is the one that's really in charge of writing the first law, basically put down the gauntlet and said, look, we'll back up on some things, 3 things particularly, but we're gonna extend this Patriot Act, otherwise the country's gonna be in big danger. And it was actually the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and other senators in the Republican Party like Lindsey Graham who said, no way, we need all of this. But then you also had Republicans and liberals in the Democratic Party that were saying we should have none of this. Rand Paul did a filibuster to try to stop not only the Patriot Act from being extended, but the Freedom Act, which we're going to talk about right now. So there's a lot of differentiation in the Republican Party, especially between libertarians and more kind of neocon conservatives who are more interested in national security. But the Freedom Act does extend the Patriot Act. That's number one. So most of the big activities, like the PRISM program that comes through Executive Order 12333, which gives the NSA the power to direct federal agencies, and the 2008 FISA Acts, which really allow for the federal government through the NSA, and Snowden revealed this, to use kind of foreign inceptors through the root of the internet to collect just a lot of people's information. And they'd use what's called a HOP system. So if they identify somebody, they think Sammy's a bad guy. Not only are they going to collect all the data on Sammy, but all of Sammy's contacts and all of Sammy's contacts and all of Sammy's contacts. Whew. And that, of course, is dipping into Americans' personal records. And the same thing was going on with the phone records. So other than that, some of the other extensions, the roving wiretaps are still going to happen. If a terrorist buys a phone and throws the phone out, you don't have to go get another warrant to, figure out how to cover that next phone. You're covering the individual and all the communications they make. And remember, all of this stuff is with technically a warrant. Of course, it's a secret warrant that goes through what's called the FISA court. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act created these courts in the 1970s to really rein in the domestic spying programs that were going on under Richard Nixon. But now these FISA courts are under the Patriot Act and under other laws really concealing the reasons why their issuing warrants, secret warrants, and also some of the rationales for how they're interpreting the Patriot Act. So in a sense, not only are their rulings in secret, ex parte, but they're also not even available to people if they want to figure out why they made these rulings. So we also have a lone wolf amendment that's still going to be extended with the Patriot Act, which basically allows the federal government to designate somebody as a terrorist, even if they don't have affiliations with a real terrorist group, the lone wolf kind of thing. But there are some things that are going to stop, and that's what's important right now. So let's look at 3 things that the USA Freedom Act changed from the 2001 Patriot Act.
Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man.
So the big one is what Edward Snowden revealed when he, leaked the NSA stuff about the phone bulk collection program. And basically the NSA was in charge of collecting the phone records of who you called and how long you talked and what numbers you dialed. And they had a 3-hop system. So if they identified somebody that was, a foreigner outside of this country and they were going to, collect all of their information, if, they had a friend on their contact list who had a friend on their contact list who had you on your contact list, then you were going down, buddy, at least in terms of the government collecting that information and then trolling through it to see if they could find anything. So that's kind of gonna stop, not really. First of all, if the FISA court approves these giant warrants that allow for this program, it's going to continue for 6 months as the federal government and the NSA figure out how to kind of switch the levers to really allow the phone companies to collect the data, and then they'll basically be rooting through that information. So really, they're still storing the information and they have access to the information, but it won't be in the federal government's house, it'll be in the private, AT&T house. And then through the FISA courts, of course, they're going to be able to get those secret warrants that are going to be able to go through those records. And I believe it's a 2-hop system. So it'll be the suspected terrorist and all their contacts and all of their contacts. What is still in question is what happens to all of those records that have been collected over the last decade or whatever, and that have been ruled unconstitutional. A federal court ruled in May 2015 that this program was illegal. Now, what else changes? Well, a couple small things. They're going to start declassifying some of the FISA court rulings. So the secret court that had these kind of secret interpretations about this secret law that nobody really knew about is now going to be forced to be at least a little bit transparent in providing judicial interpretations and rationale, so we understand how they're interpreting the words in these specific laws that are allowing for these agencies to spy. And it's also going to do something which, I don't know if it's a big deal, but in the past, these private companies that were getting these NSA, demands to turn over their records were not allowed to even tell anybody that they were being told to turn over their records, and that's changed. So they'll be able to at least give the number of demands that the federal government has imposed upon them. So what does that change? I don't know, but we do have the major components of the Patriot Act going to 2019. But it is important because for the first time since 9/11, we're definitely, going in the other direction. Whether that's an inch or a mile, I think is up to you, the viewer, to decide. So why don't you guys do that? Leave it down in the comments below. What do we think of the USA Freedom Act? Are you with Rand Paul? Do you think we should have just got rid of the whole thing? Or are you like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and you think that this is putting the country in risk? Or, are you like the co-sponsors of the Senate bill, which is Mike Lee, a libertarian conservative from Utah, and Patrick Leahy, an ice cream eating, Grateful Dead loving Vermont liberal? That's when you're bringing the country together. All right, guys, we'll see you next time that you press my buttons on Hip Hughes History. If you haven't subbed, we're going to make it really easy for you guys. All you have to do is click the little magic button over there, and you'll be subscribed to fun and funky free lectures when we be putting them out. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Where attention goes, energy flows. We hope you enjoy the learnings.
La, 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 la.